Welcome back to Connect and Transform. This video is going to be a little different because I don't really have any plan other than to say originally I was going to create an additional chart type called a control chart. So if you look over here at the line chart example, imagine this was a chart of, let's say, your weight or your net worth. You can imagine that there might be areas of the chart that might be considered too low, too risky, or maybe even too high for good or bad, right? If we're talking about net worth, having that be, quote, too high would be a good thing. And if we're talking about weight, could go another direction. So the idea of a control chart is basically that it's a regular graph, could be a line graph or maybe some other treatment, but that there would be regions that would have a certain classification and a certain presentation to them. So maybe they would be colored red or green or something to indicate that you're out of bounds, either in a good way or a bad way. But I've been thinking about it on and off, and I think that it would be more appropriate to just add this as an attribute that can be applied to any of these chart types. So for example, the scatter chart, there's no reason that you couldn't say that there's a region above, say 10K on this axis, that there's no reason to say that you shouldn't treat that as having a certain classification just because it's a scatter chart versus a line chart. Now, it may be less common for someone to choose an area or a bar representation and also have these kind of colored regions, but I think it's up to the user and they'll make reasonable choices. I think that for our purposes today, we're going to implement colored regions and just say that they can be applied to any chart type, just for the sake of simplicity. So I'm going to pick a chart here. I'm going to pick the line charts to be able to demo with. So that would be the ones with type equals line. So that would be, let's look at 2.7. So that'll be the one that we modify. So we're going to add something called, we're going to add a property called regions. And it'll be an array of objects. And we're going to have a couple of variables here. So we're going to need like a min and max value and probably a color. I'm not sure yet if I want the user to specify the opacity of the regions. I think for now I'm just going to have it hard-coded. But we're going to have a min value. And I'm not sure, okay, so if we're looking at the line chart, let's say we make a region from the area of, I don't know, 2600 to 3900, from that tick mark to that tick mark. That'll make it easy for us to see if we're positioning it correctly. So min value 2600, max value 3900, color, and then that'll be some color. Let's just say red for now. And then we may also want to have like a tooltip so that we can say something like classification needs improvement. Okay, so we've got this property regions, which is an array. Over here in our code, when we're adding these regions, we want to do it after we initialize the y-axis because we want to make sure that we have a proper y-axis with min and max values defined, but we want to do it before the data. We want the data to show up over the regions. So I'm going to insert a new function here, and I'm going to say init regions, and we will define that in a moment. But first, under validate graph data, I'm going to say if regions is not defined, so exclamation point, not set, then graph data.regions is going to equal a new array. So it's very similar to what we did in other places for initializing tooltips. That way, if we have a loop around regions, we're not going to immediately create some kind of coding issue. Okay, so as far as positioning our function, okay, there's init data, so we'll put it just before init data. So this is init regions. Okay, so this is the one that we have to build. Keep in mind we have 4 variables per region. We have min value, max value, color, and tooltip. So I think in this function we'll handle the positioning and coloring and creation of the regions, and then for the tooltips we'll do that down in the tooltip function. So first things first, let's look back at our 4 pieces of data and think about this for a moment. So if tooltip is not present, we don't care. We just won't add a tooltip. If color, well, okay, so if tooltip is not present, we'll just set it to empty string. If color is not present, then we'll assume that the user doesn't want that region to be shown anyway, and we just won't process it. If the min value is greater than the max value, maybe we'll swap it. But I think that's the only fix, quote, fix of the data that we'll do. And then if min and max are the same, then we'll assume there's nothing to show, so we'll skip processing. So let's look at that. So first I'll say if min is greater than max, then we'll swap the values. So if graph data, we need, because regions is an array, we need a loop to go through our arrays. So I'm just going to copy that loop there. And we'll make the variable r for region. Okay, so now we've got our loop for each region. So if graph data.regions at position r dot min value is greater than the max value, and I know this is a terrible, terrible name because both min and max start with M. I don't care. Okay, so we've stored the min value, so I think we're safe to update the min value first, if I'm getting that in the right order. So we're going to say min value equals max value, and then max value equals MV, which was storing our previous min value. Okay, so we're doing the swap there. Otherwise, if they are the same, then we'll just continue and we won't do any processing in this loop. So if min equals max, and what was the other thing we said? Oh, the color. Okay. Okay, so if there's no color, then we're going to skip processing. For the tooltips, I think we'll handle that maybe in the tooltip function. I'll think about that. But now I think we're ready to create our region rectangle. but we might have some constants up there first. Let's copy. I'm sure we've got a rectangle created somewhere in the code here. There we go. There's a rectangle right there. Okay, so this will be region. We may not need an ID. We will definitely need X, Y, width, and height. We're also going to need fill, but I'm going to set it directly. And then we'll also need opacity. So for opacity, let's just start it at like 0.1. For the X position, it's always going to be 80, and the width is always going to be 1080, the entire width and X position of the graphical area of the chart. The Y position and height will vary. The fill color is going to be our color, which is going to be that. And then we got to make sure that we're appending the region, and we will append it to the graph element. There, okay. I was just making sure that I was doing things right. Okay, so we've got a region. That might be it for this function. Now we need to figure out the Y and the height. So for that, we're going to have to figure out some sort of translation from the min value and max value. We're going to have to figure out like pixels per unit on the y-axis. And that's going to be probably okay, so that's probably going to be the range of the series. So, okay, imagine that our y-axis goes from 0 to 100. So the range of the y-axis is 100 pixels, but it's over 432 pixels. Okay, yeah, because we don't care about the range of the region yet. We're looking at the range of the y-axis. So this is going to be graph data.y-axis.maxValue minus graph data.y-axis.minValue. Okay, so that's the number of pixels per unit on the y-axis. Now we need to do something with that to figure out where to start positioning the region. And we need to keep in mind that the region max could be greater than the y max. What am I calling this? I guess we'll call it region max y. It's never going to be less than 68 because that would position something right at the top of the graphical portion of the canvas. So at the very least, we know it's going to be math.max between something and 68. Because as the y increases, it goes further down in the axis. So it's kind of inverted because everything is indexed from the top left as far as the coordinate system goes. So we know it's going to be at least 68 down from the very top of the canvas. And then let's see. So we're going to have to get the difference of the max y. It's going to be something similar to this, except looking at the region position. Let me think about this. So I think this is going to be 68 plus some amount. And it's that offset amount that I need to calculate. So I think that's going to be pixels per y unit times something. And now we need to figure out yeah, so I think this is going to be math dot max between a difference and 0. And the difference is going to be the y-axis max value versus the region at position R dot max value. And I think we're going to have a similar equation for the min y looking at the region's min value. I think. Okay, so region max y is going to be our y position. And then well, our height might just be region max y minus region min y. Okay, let's save that and refresh. Okay, we must have done something wrong because nothing has showed up on the screen. Let's inspect. I don't see any rectangle. We are creating a rectangle, right? And we're looking at regions. Let me go make sure we have a region. Sure looks like we do. Tooltip color, max value, min value. Looks reasonable, and it looks like something we would see on this axis. Okay, if min value is greater than max, we swap. If they're equal, we continue. If the, oh, what is this? Regions at position R. Okay, at least something changed. A negative height is not valid. Oh, because right, since we're going from the top of the screen, we got to swap this around because because we're basing this on the min value, which is lower on the y-axis, which is a higher y value because it's further from the top left origin. So min y is always higher, region min y is always higher than region max y. Okay, let's save that. Let's see what other errors we have. So 397. Properties of null. What do you mean it doesn't like that? All right, I'm just going to save it and refresh. We'll see if we have an error. Okay, we do. Document.query selector graph. I'm just going to copy that. I must have had a typo. I have no idea where the typo was. Oh, I capitalized the G. Okay. All right, there we go. All right, so that actually worked pretty well. We see our, let's go back to our host file where we've defined our data. So our color is red, and we see a very light opacity, a very transparent red here, and max value 3900, min value 2600. We have not yet done the tooltips. Speaking of which, the tooltips seem to be kind of broken. Let me... Series is not defined on 747. Oh, I think I was in the middle of tweaking this. I thought there was a line of code. I think I accidentally deleted a line of code. Let's reconstruct it then. I think that's it. Let me refresh. Okay, so we're back to nothing is broken. The color's working, the position of it's working. Now let me add another range here, another region. So for this one, I want it to partially overlap the red, but not completely. So I think we'll have it max out at 3000. And for the minimum, I guess we'll just say like 1000. It doesn't really matter. And maybe we'll make it green. And then for here, maybe we'll just say, we don't even need it to say classification. We can just say very good or whatever. It doesn't really matter. It's just a placeholder for some text. So let's refresh. We should see a second region and we should see them overlap. So let's look at the values. The green one should be 1000 to 3000. It looks like it's working properly. The other one is 26 to 39. There's two other things I wanted to check. So let's say this goes from negative 1000 to 3000. I'm hoping, okay, that doesn't work. We need to fix that. So negative numbers, actually, I'm going to leave that as a negative number. The maximum on the y-axis is 13,000, so I'm going to say 15,000. Refresh. So that is working. We're cutting off at 13,000, so I'm happy with that. So I'll back out that last change. So the one thing we do need to fix before we move on to the tooltips is we need to cut off the regions at the actual y-axis. Okay, where is it? I think I went right past it. Okay, init regions. There we go. Okay, so we've got oh, right. This is going to be math.min between the calculated value. Is it 432? No, it's 500. Okay, refresh, and there we go. So now we've got that region cutting off at the y-axis. So positioning is good, coloring is good. That's 3 out of our 4 attributes. The only thing left is tooltips. So let's go down here to the tooltip function, show tooltip. And as a quick reminder, as far as what this if statement is doing, so we're defaulting the tooltip to just be the series name. And then we're saying if it's a type other than area, then we're actually going to go get the tooltips and have more custom tooltips than just the series name. And I think for the purpose of just coding this live without a plan. I think we don't need to worry about area charts right now. And let me scroll up to the area charts. Yeah, I think that's going to be best because if the tooltips were only applied to the circles at the node points here, that would be one thing. But it looks like the tooltip is actually applying to the whole polygon, and that's not something that I want to work on, because if I was doing that live, I'd have to basically read the mouse cursor position and dynamically change the tooltip based on the Y position of the mouse and which regions are present. So anyway, I think what we're going to do is all of our code is going to go right here where this line is. It's going to be inside this if statement, so it's only going to apply to things that are not area or area stacked. And I think we're going to have a loop for our regions, but I'm going to scroll up. I'm just going to copy that from our last function. Okay, so we've got this. Okay, init tooltip, show tooltip. Okay. So there's our loop for regions. And then we're going to have some testing condition. And if that condition holds, then what we're going to do is we're going to append to tooltip text. We're going to give it a new line, and then we're going to put our actual tooltip, which would be I think it would just be graph data.regions at position r dot tooltip. Now, what if this doesn't exist? Did we deal with that? I don't think we did. So I think we'll check if the tooltip exists before we even go into this loop. So we're going to say if that is set and it has a length greater than 0, because we don't want to be appending a new line for no reason. Okay, and then we're looping for each region, and then we're going to be testing that our data value is within the range, so that there's going to be some minimum comparison condition and some maximum comparison condition. Yeah, and if that's true, then we're just appending a new line and the tooltip. So I think all we need to do now is figure out what these conditions are. So one of them is, so we need to get our data point. So we know our index position for data, and let's see, is this the right series? Yeah, this would be the series that corresponds to the data node that's being hovered over. So I think we say if series dot data values at position index. So if we're comparing to the min value, then we want it to be greater than or equal. And what is the min value? The min value is on the region, so that would be graph data.regions at position r dot min value. I'm going to just copy that, paste it, and modify it over here. So here it would have to be less than or equal to the max value. So I'm going to save that. Let's do a refresh and scroll down to our line area here. Okay, must have had a typo somewhere. R is not defined on 749. Oh. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Okay. So we'll just swap those two lines of code. Okay, so we don't see any special tooltip treatment when we're outside of a region. This one has classification needs improvement because it's only in the red box. And then down here, you're in both and you see both. Very good. Let me change this back to 1000 just so that I can see that, yeah, these down here don't have any special treatment. And let's see if we can find one that's only in the green. Yeah, so this one has very good only. This one, for example, has needs improvement and very good. This one only has needs improvement, and this one doesn't have anything. So I think we're done. Our tooltips appear to be working as expected. Our positioning is working, and our coloring is working. So the only thing that would improve this chart that we're looking at is defining valid data. But data in this case is intended to be provided by the user. And the data that I have here is just as a proof of concept. And proof of concept wise, everything is working. So cool. We've added definable regions, and we can even have points that are in multiple regions and add multiple lines to the tooltips. So for example, we could have a graph about our weight or our net worth, and we could have blue regions, red regions, orange regions, whatever we want. And these were just notes on my thoughts earlier on the properties that might be needed for regions. So yeah, we're done. Thank you for watching.